Hey everyone, I'm the Idea Maker, and today I'm going to be doing my review on Agatha All Along, episode 3. So this is just a review. Like I mentioned before, I'm not doing a full-out reaction and review for it just because of the events that have unfolded personally, which I have mentioned before. For those of you who are brand new to the channel, as I mentioned to my subscribers and to those that you are just discovered me, I didn't want to do a reaction to Agatha All Along because for me, I'm not really involved into dark fantasy horror, but I did want to see it because it's the MCU. I know they're going to tie it in somehow, but a personal thing that happened to my family and I was that my grandmother passed away back a month ago, and some stuff in the trailer already made me feel like it was going to bring back some things, so I didn't want to do a full out reaction and then edit it and relive it again. So it's just out of personal reasons. So I wanted to just do a review on it. And I got to say, this is a good episode, but when I get to the non-spoiler part of it, it's just going to be a little bit more difficult to express because if you have not seen the episode, if you do feel like you can be able to handle horror whatsoever, then go ahead and do so. But I definitely recommend that it's not for kids, not even for young teens, not even teens in general. This is more for adults. So I would just keep that in mind. But first of all, to the non-spoiler review part, it was good in terms of visually. I did see when they said that it's not going to use any type of CGI, but or even to the minimal amount of CGI, and I could definitely see it. I definitely saw the fact that they were using a lot of practical effects, that the sets were actually real. I could tell that they weren't really trying to use a lot of green screen. They were trying to make it as realistic as possible, and it felt like a legitimate episode of a horror anthology series, which was pretty cool. That we got to see a different side of Marvel where they could embrace horror, they can embrace comedy, they could be able to embrace drama, and be able to seamlessly blend it all in one shot, which is pretty awesome. And I really like that they did so. Another thing that I did like too was I feel like the chemistry between the witches in the coven and the teen and Mrs. Hart was actually they really hit it on the head, where you could easily see that there is this true type of chemistry with each other, and it felt like they were like a real family to a point, and it was interesting to see how real it felt. And I do like the chemistry that even the adults had with the teen character, which of course I do still feel like it's Billy Kaplan, but we'll definitely see alongside the road if that's really him or if it's a different character that maybe we might not have known. But we'll see where we get to and see where exactly this is going to take us. So from that, the horror elements that were used in this episode were very spot on. I really feel like they used practical effects to its advantage, and I do feel like it's a plot that it really elevated more of the story of this episode, which I will get into the spoiler review. I feel like, though, I think so far out of a ranking between the first, second, and third episodes, I want to say that the first episode was a good introduction into the characters. It was a good introduction to revisiting Agatha as a character and getting to see her go out of the out of Wanda's hex after being stuck in there for 3 years. And it was a pretty good thing that we actually got to be reintroduced to her. It was cool we get to see like a reintroduction of the character to a point, and I do feel like this series is like a character study, that it really does take a lot of good ways of elevating the character to being both unlikable and likable at the exact same time. Like, you want to love her, but you want to hate her at the same exact time. They do a good job on containing this love-hate relationship that you have with her as the viewer to the character that you're watching the show on. It does feel like a villainous show. Like, it does feel like if she truly is a villain, but at the same time, she wants to be a hero to some degree, but not completely, as she does a great job. Like, the actress Catherine Hahn, who plays Agatha Harkness, actually does a really good job on making you want to sympathize with her, but also at the same time, you don't really want to have to do anything with her. it's this really interesting thing that she does that, to me, she's a likable actress and I love her, and but the way she portrays the character, it's like I want to like her, but I also don't trust her at the exact same time. And she's very talented. She does a really great job with it. And the thing about it that I really, really like about it is that she does this great job on having to maintain the love-hate relationship that you probably might have. She does a great job on having to maintain the love-hate relationship that even the witches might have with her. And I mean, of course, the teen, he loves her, like adores her, idolizes her and everything. But the other witches, they go and they think, what's the point on having to keep on trusting her if she's a backstabbing witch? Literally a witch, because she is one. And it's just something that I say that it's pretty cool to see that she plays the role super well, and I got to give it to her. She is a solid actress, that she can act, she can sing, she has a range that I didn't think I was ever going to see in a while, especially for a series like this, because that it's a range of emotions, it's a range of genres, that they're trying to shift it from a lighthearted horror comedy to a dark horror series. And especially, it's great to do it in time for Halloween. But this is where I'm also going to be expressing more of why also that, to me, not only it's a great episode with the visual, but it's one of those episodes that I feel like it's something that I think that I can't be able to watch super frequently. And that's going to be part of the spoiler part of it. There's really not much to say about it except that it was visually great. It felt like when they was having the shift between different genres, it did a really good job doing so. And you liking the characters or not liking the characters, despite what their motives are, what their intentions are, and what kind of characters they are, like it does a great job doing so. So it makes you root for them, but also boo for them. So not an intentional Halloween pun, right? By the way, but it was a good episode. But I think realistically for me, it's not ranked high. And it's also going to be for the spoiler part of it. So that's what I'm going to be heading into right now. And I think you might understand where I'm going to be coming from with this in the next part right now. All right. So we're in the spoiler part of the review. So if you guys have not seen episode 3, I would definitely recommend doing so before getting into the spoiler review. And if you have, then please stick around as I give a little bit of time for those who have not seen it to go and come back and take it from there. All right, so if you're still here, it means that you've already seen it or you just came back from seeing it. So last chance, everyone. So if you have not seen it, please go and do so. If not, we're gonna head right into it in 3, 2, 1. All right. Now, so the way how this episode goes is that we see Agatha and the Coven go on the Witch's Road, and that they're going to go through the first trial. Turns out the first trial is kind of like a house that's in a nice environment type thing, like if it's off the plains or if it's like in a nice meadow area. When they go in, it kind of feels like a Pretty Little Liars, Big Little Lies type of situation that they're trying to that they're setting it in. And it turns out, like after a riddle that has been that was placed for them, it turns out that I don't even remember what the riddle was, but it then leads to them drinking wine that it turns out it's a poison, and they have to figure out within 30 minutes after the timer had been set off to be able to try to figure out an antidote to this poisonous wine. So, with them trying to find the ingredients for this antidote spell, they're trying to do their best to be able to do so. And then next thing you know, 3 of the witches ends up having these traumatic flashbacks, which it's, traumatizing, as it's a part of their past that it's haunting them, that it's still eating at them and, tearing right at them internally and emotionally. And they have to fight their way out of those different little things of trauma that they had to overcome, which, as I said in the previous review, that as I predicted, that it is going to be a thing of trials, and that they're going to go through different shows or different like sitcoms or different plays or musicals that we've seen in pop culture. And that's what this whole thing of the Witch's Road is going to be. And so from there, we basically have for them to go and keep on trying as best as they can, because unfortunately, Mrs. Davis, or as you guys might know her, Mrs. Hart, she drinks the wine, and she drinks it the second time, but she passes out. And you would be thinking that it was just being passed out, but it was a little too late after they got the antidote ready and everything, and they finally get it ready. And when they're trying to get for her to drink the antidote, it doesn't seem like it worked, and it was under the 30 minutes. It was over the 30 minutes, I mean. And it comes with a price, because they were going through different environments, and at the last 5 minutes or so, it was like if the house was underwater, and it started breaking. The glass started breaking on the house, and it just started flooding all over the place. And the only way they were able to get out was through the oven. And when they did, it landed them back on the Witch's Road once again. And the episode ends with, unfortunately, Mrs. Davis dying in the process. So one of the members of the coven, or the group, I'm not going to say part of the coven, because she wasn't a witch and she was never part of the coven, but she ends up dying, and now they have to keep continuing, and that's how the episode ends. We do get a Mephisto name drop, so for everyone who was really, really thinking that Mephisto was going to show up in WandaVision for whatever reason, because Senior Scratchy and then all these other little details, you got a name drop here. And then we also have a rumor that was going around, which it seemed like it's true, that the reason why there might have been a redaction spell on the teen is because of the fact that, I'm just thinking of a theory, that because Jennifer, she mentions to the teen that Agatha actually traded her kid and made a deal to trade her kid for the Darkhold so she can get more magic, which to me, that is the worst thing a mother can do, especially that she gave birth to a kid. And I mean, and it's like the saying goes that they said that, every woman wants to be a mother, but there's some women that are not fit to have children, just because of the fact that, they want to have children, but it's their lifestyles and their choices that they make that makes them unfit to do so. Because of, if they want to have a kid just because they want to have a kid, that's something else. And they want to live their own lives like if the kid doesn't exist, I mean, that's just not great parenting. But if they want to have a kid because they actually want to have a child, and they want to be able to take care of the child or children, then, God bless you for doing so. But, in this case, Agatha did not do such a smart thing on trading her child for more of the Darkhold to gain more magic. I mean, with that alone, it already just gives me the fact that she was just a parent that shouldn't have been a parent and shouldn't have been allowed to have kids. Because if you're gonna, and even in real life, if you're gonna go and trade your kids for something, it doesn't even matter what it is. It could be for a new lifestyle without the child in it. It could be for something that you're going to use, but it's gonna it's gonna harm you, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Then you're not fit to have kids. I'm sorry, but I gotta be frank with you. But it's just something that, it bothers me. It really bothers me to see that there's some people out there, they say that they want to have kids, they brag about it, but they go live in their lives like if they're in their if they're in their teens, like if they're going to a college frat party. It's totally unacceptable. I made a promise to myself, and I made a promise to my girl before she passed, that when I have kids, I'm gonna love my kids like a dad should love their kids, or even more than that. And I'm definitely gonna do so. And speaking about my girl, this is the reason why I would say this one hit me the hardest in ways that I did not want to get hit in the emotional feelings the most. Because for those of you who have already seen it, and for those who do know about my situation of how this whole thing with my grandmother passing recently, the thing is that my mom and I were watching Agatha all along. We've been starting to watch it ever since the first episode when it premiered, and I didn't think about this until my mom brought this up. And shout out to my mom for bringing this up. The fact that Mrs. Davis got poisoned, it brought up, it just brought up right now, a thought that when my grandmother passed, she was suffering from septic shock. And then on top of it, the details are being fuzzy on me right now, but, you know, she also had COVID on top of it. It reminded me of that. Like, the poisonous wine felt like that. It felt like a sickness that was, you know, killing Mrs. Davis. And I didn't think about that until now. And for those of you who have seen it, most likely, in my opinion, you know, the weakest one to first die on the Witch's Road would be the weakest person, whether it was a physical, spiritual, emotional, or mental attribute that went and contributed to that. And the fact that out of my family, my grandma was the weakest physically, because she did have a lot of complications because of her being a type 1 diabetic, and then kidney and liver failure, and then these other different problems that just kept staggering on and staggering on. And the fact that, you know, Mrs. Davis died because of the poison, and then my grandmother dying in somewhat of a similar fashion with the septic shock, it hit me harder than I was expecting, because I wasn't thinking about the parallelisms to real life to this. And I just want to make it clear, it's not Marvel's fault that this happened. It's nobody's fault that this was ill-timed compared, you know, to what my family and I went to. So I'm not blaming the writers, and I'm not going to blame the actors for it. I'm not going to blame Marvel or Disney for it, because, you know, they were trying to write out a show, and they wrote it out way, way before this all happened, back in 2021, 2022. So I'm not going to blame them for it. There's no reason for me to do so. And then, to be honest, the more that my mom and I kept discussing it, the more that my mom was bringing up the fact that, you know, when they were trying to do the antidote, they were so confused and feeling like if they were being rushed the whole entire time, because there were so many problems that were happening. And then, you know, they were trying to do their best. And it was like how my mom and I, my grandfather, we were trying to do our best to go and talk to the doctors and trying to do everything that they could to keep my grandma alive as much as possible. And I hate having to compare something like this in terms of dark horror, fantasy, mystical magic, stuff like this, compared to our real life. But, you know, it was a weird similarity that it happened like this. It was like we were trying to come up with different ideas in different scenarios, like having to do the antidote spell to try to get Miss Davis to come to be revived and to come back. We were trying to do the same thing for my grandma, so we can try to have for her to be revived and for her to regain her motor skills after flatlining the first time. And it was a really scary experience, because when the water started just breaking right on through, it felt like, you know, the doctors and the nurses and everyone trying to come in with the crash team, you know, trying to revive her and trying to give her all the things that they could. And, you know, it was like a literal wave of emotions and a literal wave of negativity that came hitting in and trying to keep dragging us down. And as much as we were trying to, you know, keep her alive, you know, she unfortunately passed. And as the way that Mrs. Davis passed, it kind of felt like that. And they didn't want to really move on, and the way the teen did not want to move on without having her there, it felt like that relationship that I had with my grandma, that I did not want to leave her anywhere, and I didn't want for anything to happen to her. And then when unfortunately it did, there was no choice but for us to move on. And, you know, I'm still having a tough time moving on. And I know the teen, or I'm going to call him Billy because I feel like it's Billy, you know, he had a tough time on trying to move on from leaving Mrs. Davis there. And it hit me harder. But I think that the worst out of it was, the two worst things was the flashbacks and the fact that they escaped through the oven were the two worst things, because, well, for me, emotionally, it was the worst of the two things, because first of all, with the horrific things that were going on, it felt like, because that each of us had something, and it was weird. it was really weird that I just really didn't think about this until now. 3 of them were affected by this. They had their own different personal trauma. There's 4 of us in the family. 3 of us got affected with some form of PTSD and some form of trauma. And I didn't think about that. And not in the ways that they got affected, but we had been affected a lot with all this. And even with things of the past that it truly hit us because it impacted us the most for certain degrees. And I didn't really think about that until now, that it really felt like something that we encountered. And, it was nothing like the events that was taking place in there because of, it wasn't nothing like that. It was more in terms of the fact that each of them had their trauma that they had to go through the trials. We went through our own similar trials in this path that we're taking right now. And the thing with them escaping through the oven like that, I'm not going to say that it was not tasteless. For me, as a personal opinion, being afflicted by personal living experiences, the fact that the way they carried her, carried Mrs. Davis's body to the oven and everything, it did not time well, especially because my grandma did get cremated. So this episode, while it was good visually, it's one of these episodes that I think that I cannot watch multiple times within several years because of how I think ill-timed it was with my personal situation. And again, I'm not going to blame Disney or Marvel or the writers or the actors who were involved with it, because again, I understand and acknowledge that they wrote this several years ago before my grandma passed, and we had no idea. But it was weird on how similar it was. I'm not going to say it was a bad episode either. It was good. A good episode that sets up the next episode and the rest of the series. But it was a weird coincidence, the way how events folded. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to feel like I can't continue it because I don't really want to see spoilers or anything. But that took a weird, unnaturalistic, traumatic turn to a point on how very similar it was. But I do want to express on how creative it was and how great the acting and the chemistry was between the actors on set and in the series. So I'm not going to say it was bad because of just a traumatic experience. I'm not going to say that because I did enjoy it. It was a weird, really coincidentally timed episode, especially with the fact that, this all happened with a little bit more than a month ago, which is bizarre to even say that this was about almost a little more than a month ago. It's very crazy to think. I do want to say there was a line in there that it really hit me because this was something that my 1st/4th grade teacher said, and my grandmother and my mom said. Something similar to this. There's a point where Jennifer is freaking out because she feels like she can't do the whole spell and everything, and that Agatha gives her like a weird pep talk, but it gives her something along the lines of they can take away your power, but they cannot take away your knowledge. Super relatable and super beautiful because I had a teacher back in 1st grade who I also had as my 4th grade teacher. So shout out to her. And she might recognize. I'm not gonna give out my actual name, and I'm not gonna give her name for now because I would love to get to meet up with her first before doing a public shout out with her name and everything first. But she once told me, and she told my mom during a parent teacher conference, like those traditional ones for all the kids. She said that I was a smart kid and that nobody would be able to take my education away from me. And it hit me hard because that I remember my girl saying those words to me first. And then it was her and then my mom. So having for that saying to be in the same similar vein of they might have taken away your power, but they can't take away your knowledge. That's so touching that at least that saying was in there. And I'm so glad that it was kept in there. I don't think that I would have liked this episode more if that wasn't in there. That lifted my spirits up. That lifted me up a little bit. And feeling like I was being able to acknowledge that was in there. So I am happy that they were able to add some amount of positivity to it. And it was just one of those moments where I felt like if I was back in that elementary school with those good memories and remembering how my grandmother would drop me off at school and would pick me up, and she would even her and my grandpa would drive around the school just to make sure I was okay, and just so that way I would stay safe. So I did get good memories from that quote alone, and that's something that I do want for you guys to also keep with you too. Is that, and I'll say this in the terms of both in a Christian perspective and a non-Christian perspective, but people can break you as much as they want to, but if you keep having the determination and the perseverance and the wisdom that you obtained, or that you believe that God gave you, or that you feel like you were able to obtain yourself, then nobody can be able to take that knowledge and that talent and that beautiful, beautiful character trait that you have that makes you away from you. Just because that's already embedded into your life, your lifestyle, your DNA, your personal well-being, in your thoughts, and in your heart. It already makes you a good person as it is. So I do want to, kind of close off with that saying and give you a little bit of thought and give you guys recognitions. Never let anyone tell you anything else, because the fact that if you firmly believe that that knowledge that you have is going to take you and even take other people's to places and lift you guys up simultaneously, then that's something that people cannot take away from you, because they weren't the ones that learned it the way you did, because you had to have learned it on your own or through a great parent, mentor, professor, teacher, guardian, anyone. You are your own person because of the person that was always there for you. For me, it was my grandma, and I will always be grateful to God for that. And with that alone, it just already makes me feel that I could still be able to get through the days without having to feel like if I'm having any burdens weighing me down. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to God for that. I'm grateful for my family for that. And I'm grateful to you guys for that, for being so amazing and understanding, especially when it comes to a time of need, a time to grieve, a time of trying to comprehend about what was lost during this time and how we could be able to pick up these pieces and still be able to keep on trudging through a tumultuous time. And, I could keep going on, but these are my personal feelings about it. And I do want to get this story out there. And like I said before, this is definitely going to be a channel that's going to bring up a lot of her memories, because I feel that she deserves to have her story told. And I see her in everything, because she was literally a part of everything. So it was hard for me to see, hard for my mom to see a lot of times, but it was also easy for me to see because of that one quote alone. So whoever was the writer of that quote, thank you, because when you guys wrote the quote for WandaVision saying, "But what is grief if not love persevering?" you guys came up with another great one. If it's the same writer, you should have gotten a raise for the first one, and you should get a raise for the second one, because you must have gone through something that really gave you that wisdom to write it. Because if you feel like if someone was going to be impacted by that saying, right here, impacted by both. So I do want to close off with that. And I do want to close off with the fact that, again, with both the spoiler and the non-spoiler reviews, I do want to say this is a good episode. But again, not something I would rewatch all the time, just because that it's too soon and it's not really part of the genres that I like. But I want to thank you guys again for listening to my review, my non-spoiler and my spoiler review to Agatha All Along, episode 3. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that you guys were able to have more of an understanding as to why I decided not to do both a reaction and a review to the series, especially with this time that my family and I are in. And I'm so thankful for you guys, as you guys have been doing an excellent and amazing job on spreading the channel out to others and being able to get the word out there, and being able to get to not only get to let others get to experience a fun time and not think about the problems that they might be having, but also giving people the chance to also be able to hear my different stories that I have on my grandma, that I feel like she so rightly deserved to have her story be told by others, and get to experience it firsthand like if she was the friend that you never knew, but you knew at the exact same time. So I want to give a special thanks to you guys as the subscribers, and also to those who are out there watching who haven't subscribed. And you guys are awesome, regardless of, you know, if you have or if you haven't. You guys are absolutely amazing. You guys are so wonderful. I cannot express that enough. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching my review. If you guys want to subscribe, if you guys want to check out any of my upcoming videos, please like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. If you guys want to follow me on any of my social media, I got Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, aka X, my Discord, and my Discord profiles, and my my TikTok accounts, which all the links will be in the description below. That being said, thank you guys so much. God bless you all. Stay safe. I will see you all in the next videos. Bye, guys.